Hi, good morning, BNI members. You're sitting with David from Supply My School. I am a member of the BNI, the Hub chapter in Santon. This morning I'm going to be covering a pretty important topic, that is power groups and context spheres. And a lot of people don't fully understand how the two are associated and what the differences actually are. So I'm going to try and dig into it a bit. I know Dr. Arvin Meisner has spoken about it quite a bit in his podcasts and SuccessNet, and there's huge in-depth talks and everything, but I'm going to try and cover it in a reasonable amount of time. I did this presentation for my chapter, and it worked pretty well. I think they got the point. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but at the same time, I hope I can get my point across. So number one is go forth and multiply, and make the circle bigger. I mean, at the end of the day, the more people in your power group and the more people that are in your context spheres, the better for your chapter, but effectively better for you to be able to pass referrals as well as receive referrals. So it's a win-win for everyone. There's lots of stats in terms of where your business will actually get generated from. So going on to the next slide. What is the definition of a context sphere? The definition of a context sphere is a group of symbiotic professions who have a good opportunity to provide referrals to each other. So that's pretty straightforward in terms of a definition, but basically if those people are in a similar sort of industry, where you are in the potential, where the potential client is going to be purchasing something from you at potentially the same time as somebody else, but you guys are not in conflict with one another, that's the sort of closest definition to that. So whereas like your power team is a group of individuals who have actively committed to generating business for each other. Now that can be people from multiple businesses from opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, you can have a life insurance person, a life insurance advisor, and on the opposite end you can have a handyman or whatever. It can be any two or multiple professions coming together, but actively committed to generating business for one another. And again, those people can also be from the same context sphere. So I'm going to go into the next slide over here. So here's the definition of the context sphere. So you've got your underneath, the most common thing is your contractors and your trades, your events, your business to business, your real estate, professional services, marketing, technology, health and wellness. Now that can be broken up into a whole bunch of different context spheres. However, these are basically just the main ones, but at the end of the day, these can be broken up into different facets of context spheres. So let's have a look at the first one. Obviously, it's the obvious ones. It's the painter, the handyman. Solar is obviously quite a common one now. Security, plumber, landscaping, that sort of thing. And then very, very common one is your events. So your event planners, your photographers, your DJs, all of those people that go into events. So those are people, let's say for example a wedding. I mean, it's a perfect example of a context sphere. Somebody that's going to just about to get married, where do they go first? They go to the events planner or the wedding planner. By default, that wedding planner is going to be able to pass referrals onto the photographer and the DJ and the caterer and the flower decorator and you name it, the list is endless there. And same can be said for most of these context spheres. So here's a whole bunch of them. I mean, these are really, this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how many there actually are. So I've just highlighted a few just to give you an idea. So a good exercise is to identify this within your chapter, and definitely identify which ones are needed within your chapter, which context spheres, especially if you've got a weak context sphere within your chapter. Make sure that, if there's only one person from the real estate context sphere in your chapter, you need to focus on getting other context spheres with other people from that same context sphere into your chapter to assist that person, because otherwise they're going to struggle to give referrals as well as receive referrals. Again, a group of symbiotic professions who have a good opportunity to provide referrals to each other. That's the definition of a context sphere. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. Okay, so then power team, a group of individuals who have actively committed to generating business for each other. what is the common denominator? So I asked this question within my chapter, and quite a few people didn't know the definition, which I was quite surprised about because a lot of the members have been around for quite a while. But at the end of the day, that definition is the ideal client. You are all targeting one client. I mean, that client can change, that definitely, but at the end of the day, the power team needs to be put together to identify one ideal client that you're all targeting. So, for example, my power team, we actively get together and we identify an ideal client, and even to an extent our power team. I mean, we've got some parts of the power team which are actually more focused on high schools, for example, and some parts of the power team are actually more focused on your nursery schools and your smaller schools. So again, we focus on schools as a power team, but not all of us have the exact same ideal client, but we do focus on getting schools, and that's schools within the Johannesburg area predominantly. So that's quite an important one. So I'm going to use an example here that I used with my chapter, and that is an ideal client. And I asked somebody in the room, and it was a 25-year-old couple living in Randburg, which is in Johannesburg, getting married with a dual income of 1.5 million rand. So who would want that as an ideal client? And a whole bunch of people put up their hands, and obviously those are from all different context spheres. So for example, you could have somebody from that's a painter over here that would want to do business with the ideal client. You can also have the real estate person. Obviously they're looking at buying their first house. Bam, immediately that person would be interested in that business. The attorney to draw up the contract for buying that house, and the list is endless, obviously, but at the end of the day, it comes down to getting together and actively going out of your way to look for business. Already we do that as a chapter, but at the same time, a power team, you actively have to make sure that you are looking for that ideal client together. And again, if you've got a smaller chapter or even a bigger chapter, there's no harm in doing it as a chapter, I believe. It's definitely something that you can identify as a chapter. I hope this has made some sense. I really do. Please look out for videos, SlideShare, all sorts of things on my various social media platforms. So yeah, if there's any sort of questions, please put your comments on the social media platforms, and I will try and answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much. Bye.